They say betrayal feels like a knife to the back, but honestly, it felt more like a slow leak in a tire. One day you're driving smooth, windows down, singing off-key with the wind in your face, and the next, you're pulled over on the side of the road, sparks flying off a bare rim, wondering when the air disappeared. My name's Carter Fields, 42 years old, engineer, proud owner of a dog that hates fetch and a wife who, as I recently discovered, prefers her yoga instructor's company over mine. And not just for downward dog, if you catch my drift. I wasn't the kind of guy who snooped. Never read her texts, never questioned her girls' nights, and I certainly never thought the scented candles and sudden interest in hot Pilates were anything more than a midlife rebrand. But then came the business trip. I was supposed to be in Denver for 3 days. Last minute, it got canceled. I didn't tell her. Thought I'd surprise her, flowers in one hand, her favorite Thai takeout in the other. That's how the movies do it, right? What I found wasn't movie material. There was another car in the driveway. A blue Subaru with a dent in the bumper and a license plate that read Zen Body. And through the frosted glass of our front door, I saw silhouettes. 2. Close. Moving. I stood there for a solid minute, Thai food slowly losing temperature, tulips bending in my grip like they knew what was coming. Eventually, I turned around, drove to my buddy Marcus's place, and slept on his couch. I didn't explode. I didn't make a scene. I just processed. That's my thing. I'm a processor. But this wasn't going to be something I just moved past. I knew that much. There are betrayals you survive, and betrayals that wake something up in you, something cold, focused, and eerily calm. And this one? This one woke me up. The next morning, I did something I never thought I'd do. I went back home. She was already dressed, hair wet from a shower, robe cinched too tightly like she was trying to hold in a guilty conscience. She looked up from her coffee and froze when she saw me. Carter. Her voice cracked on my name like it hadn't been expecting to say it again. I set the Thai food on the counter. It was still in the bag. Cold. Like the mood. Trip got canceled, I said, watching her face for any twitch of panic. Oh, that's all she managed. One syllable. No smile. No hug. No, I missed you. Just a breathless, oh. Who drives a Subaru? I asked, nodding to the driveway. She didn't answer. Just stared into her mug like she was trying to read tea leaves that weren't there. So that's a yes, I said, more to myself than to her. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't call her names. I just pulled out a chair and sat down like we were about to discuss insurance deductibles. Carter, I didn't mean to get caught. I offered. She winced. To hurt you. Too late, I said. But go ahead. I'm listening. Give me the headline. She swallowed, looked at her hands, then met my eyes. His name is Brandon. He teaches yoga. It started 6 months ago. Was that before or after the scented candles started showing up? She didn't answer. Didn't need to. Does Brandon know you're married? I asked. She nodded. He says love doesn't obey boundaries. I smiled. One of those dry, sarcastic ones you flash when someone says something so ridiculous it doesn't even deserve a response. Well, that's poetic. He sounds deep. She actually defended him. He's not a bad person. Neither is a python, I said. Still squeezes the life out of you eventually. I stood up. I wasn't going to throw anything, wasn't going to yell. But I needed space. Air. Sanity. I'll be staying with Marcus for a while, I said. Figure out what comes next. Carter. Please. But I was already at the door. I paused, hand on the knob. Tell Brandon to move his car, I said over my shoulder. Or I'll have it towed. Then I walked out, leaving her with her tea leaves and a mess of her own making. Marcus is the kind of friend every man hopes he has when the world decides to cave in. His guest room smelled vaguely like old basketball shoes and pizza boxes, but at least it didn't smell like betrayal. He didn't say much that first night. Just handed me a beer and a remote and let me sit in silence. That's how you know someone's really in your corner, not the ones who offer 1,000 words, but the ones who know when to say nothing at all. The next morning, the text started. Her, can we talk? Her, please don't tell anyone. Her, it was a mistake. Her, Brandon thinks it's best we all take space. Her, are you staying with Marcus? And the worst one. Her, I still love you. I stared at that last message like it was written in a language I'd never learned. Love? That word doesn't survive being thrown under a Subaru named Brandon. Marcus peeked over my shoulder. She's fishing. For sympathy? For control, he said. Guilt is her fishing line. Don't bite. I didn't respond to any of them. That evening, I called a lawyer. Not because I was ready to pull the trigger, but because I needed to know where the gun was, just in case. The lawyer, Ruth Delgado, didn't sugarcoat things. You have the advantage right now. No kids. House isn't both your names, but your financials are clean. And if she's been shacking up with a yoga guru while married, let's just say the court might raise an eyebrow. Do I have to prove it? She gave a half shrug. Only if you want to hurt her. That made me pause. I didn't want to hurt her, but I didn't want to protect her anymore either. That night, I sat on Marcus's patio, staring at the moon, sipping the last of his decent whiskey. My phone buzzed again. Her name. I let it ring. Then, a voicemail. I played it, expecting more tears or apologies. Instead, it was her voice, calm, rehearsed. Carter. I just think we both need to accept that maybe we were never meant to last forever. People change. I've changed. I need someone who understands me now, not the man I married 10 years ago. I almost laughed. Because the man she married 10 years ago? He would have forgiven her. The man she just betrayed? He was someone else entirely. You never really know how many things tether your life to someone until you try to untangle it all. I wasn't just walking away from a marriage. I was stepping through a minefield built out of shared furniture, Spotify playlists, and insurance premiums. Every drawer I opened seemed to whisper, remember when this still meant something? The worst part? Our dog, Hazel. She's a rescue mutt with more anxiety than a caffeinated squirrel. And somehow, she still wagged her tail when my wife walked in the room. Dogs forgive too easily. I wish I had that kind of heart. I stopped by the house 3 days after I left, unannounced. I wanted to grab a few essentials, some clothes, my work laptop, and, let's be honest, just see for myself how bad the wreckage really was. Brandon's Subaru wasn't in the driveway. A small mercy. I let myself in with my key, still mine, at least for now, and was immediately greeted by Hazel, her tail thumping like a faulty engine. She spun in circles, licked my jeans, then paused like she was waiting for someone else to walk in behind me. Just me, girl, I said, scratching behind her ears. The one who didn't ruin everything. The house smelled faintly of sandalwood and betrayal. You think that's dramatic, but I swear, there was a scent, a tone in the air, that said you're not the only one here anymore. I found her in the kitchen, barefoot, making tea. Not ours. Some new herbal thing, probably from a farmer's market Brandon had spiritually recommended. Oh, she said, like I'd interrupted a commercial break. I didn't expect you. No kidding, I said, brushing past her toward the stairs. Carter, wait. Can we talk? Is he here? I asked, not turning around. No, he's not coming around anymore. I stopped mid-step. He dumped you already? She didn't answer, which told me enough. I looked at her then, really looked at her. The woman I'd fallen for was still in there somewhere. Same green eyes, same habit of biting her lower lip when nervous, but she wore a different expression now. Like she was the protagonist of her own romantic drama, and I was just the antagonist who didn't understand her growth. I want to make things right, she said. With me. With myself. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't about saving the marriage. This was about her trying to redeem the narrative. I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a footnote. I'm just here to grab my things, I said, heading upstairs. The bedroom looked edited. Some of my stuff was already in a neat pile on the bed. My shirts folded like she was sending me off to college. Even the cologne I wore every day, gifted by her, by the way, was tucked into the pile like an afterthought. You packed for me? I figured it would help. Yeah, helps me feel like a guest in my own house. I finished grabbing the rest of my gear, watch, laptop charger, a photo of me and Hazel from the park, and stuffed it into my duffel. As I walked out, she stood at the bottom of the stairs, hands clasped like she was about to pray. Carter. I know this sounds crazy, but I hope someday we can look back at this and understand it. I met her eyes. Oh, I understand it just fine. She opened her mouth to respond, but I was already out the door. Later that night, Marcus found me back on his couch with Hazel curled up by my feet and my duffel still half unzipped. Beer? He asked. Sure. He handed me a cold one and sat down across from me, stretching out like a man about to drop some truth. I don't usually do the whole emotional advice thing, he said, but, you okay? I took a sip. Define okay. I mean, are you planning revenge, writing sad poetry, or signing up for a rock climbing class? You've got that man on the edge energy right now. I chuckled. Honestly, I feel like a building that's still standing after the demolition team hit the wrong button. Ah, Marcus said. So not rubble. Just shaken. Exactly. We sat in silence a moment. Hazel snored softly at my feet. You know, Marcus said eventually, a guy at work went through the same thing. Wife cheated. Moved in with the dude she met on a juice cleanse or something. Anyway, guy got the last word. How? He wrote a book about it. Called it Green Smoothie Blues. Sold pretty well. I raised an eyebrow. So you're saying I should monetize my heartbreak? Why not? Better than letting it rot in your chest. Put it out there. Be the guy who took a hit and stood back up. That idea stuck with me. Because maybe the best revenge isn't fire or fury. Maybe it's rebuilding. Stronger. Sharper. With foundation reinforced by truth. The next morning, I sat at Marcus's kitchen table and opened my laptop. Blank document. Cursor blinking. Title, After Brandon. I'll be the first to admit, I didn't think I'd actually go through with writing anything. The title After Brandon had started as a joke. Something snarky to amuse Marcus over breakfast while Hazel begged for toast crumbs under the table. But by that evening, I'd written 5 pages. By the weekend, 15. It wasn't a book yet, it was a slow leak of venom. Memories dressed in sarcasm. Scenes I'd replayed too many times in my head now spilled out in black and white absolutes. I didn't sugarcoat. I didn't hold back. I told the truth the way you only can once you've stopped caring what people think of your version. I wrote about the night she came home wearing perfume I didn't recognize. About the late work meetings and girls' retreats that all started to sound suspiciously like cover stories written by a first-time liar. About Brandon, the absently smug face I'd only seen once but couldn't scrub from my brain if I tried. And I wrote about the day I stopped loving her. That was the part that hit hardest. Not the betrayal, not the infidelity, not even the humiliating voicemail with her poetically detaching from our history like it was a sweater out of season. It was the realization that the woman I married, the woman I once defended in arguments and toasted at birthdays, was a ghost now. A carbon copy overwritten by someone who wanted freedom but not consequences. The woman I loved was gone. The one left in her place? She was a case study, and I was her former test subject. The writing became a ritual. Early mornings before the world got noisy, I'd pour coffee, sit with Hazel at my feet, and bleed into that keyboard. It wasn't therapeutic. Let's not get romantic about it. It was necessary. Like picking glass out of your foot before the wound could close. One morning, Marcus walked by and glanced at the screen. You ever think about what she'd say if she read this? Every sentence, I replied. He nodded. You're still writing for her. I didn't answer. Because he was right. 2 weeks passed, and then came the text that pulled the pin out of the next grenade. Her, Brandon, and I are over. I just thought you should know. No apology. No reflection. Just a status update. Like she was changing her relationship setting and figured I deserved a push notification. I ignored it. 20 minutes later, another one. Her. I miss you. There it was. The first crack in her armor. She thought I'd rush to fill the silence with forgiveness. Thought I'd see I miss you as some kind of olive branch, instead of what it really was, a test balloon to see if I still floated her way. Instead, I replied. Me. Tell Brandon I said thanks. She didn't text again. Later that night, Marcus and I sat on the porch, watching Hazel chase squirrels that didn't want the smoke. You know, Marcus said, you should finish that book. I plan to. And publish it. I laughed. You think anyone wants to read about a guy who got blindsided by a downward dog instructor named Brandon? Only everyone, he said. You're not writing for her anymore. You're writing for the guys who think they're crazy because their wives suddenly found enlightenment in hot yoga and handmade kombucha. He wasn't wrong. Brandon might have stolen my wife, but I had the story. And the story? That was starting to become something more. It was a Tuesday morning when I finally opened the email from my lawyer, Ruth. Subject, formal divorce filing. Her tone was as dry and precise as ever. Attached are the documents. Once signed, we'll initiate proceedings. Please review and let me know if you have questions. P.S. Your prenup saved your behind. God bless my anxious 29-year-old self for insisting on that document. I read every line, every clause. I wasn't angry anymore. I was clinical. Focused. This wasn't revenge. It was resolution. I signed, scanned, and sent it back. Then I opened After Brandon and wrote a new chapter. Chapter 18, The Signature. That weekend, I ran into her. At the grocery store, of all places. She was in yoga pants, of course, and had that frazzled, mid-apology energy women get when they aren't sure if they're the villain or just misunderstood. We locked eyes in the produce aisle. I had a basket of bananas and eggs. She had almond milk and a manila envelope under her arm. Carter, she said, as if saying my name might bring the past back into the room. Hey. A long pause. How have you been? I smiled. Writing a book. She blinked. Really? Really? Inspired by recent events. I could see the wheels turning behind her eyes. Is it about me? It's about a man who lost his wife to a yoga instructor named Brandon. You tell me. Her mouth opened, then closed. I didn't mean to hurt you. I nodded, not unkindly. But you did. So now I'm making something out of it. She shifted awkwardly, clinging to the manila envelope like it might protect her from what she'd done. I was dropping off signed copies for the lawyer. So was I. We stood there, two strangers in the frozen aisle of a life we used to share. Take care, Carter, she said. You too, I replied. Then I turned and walked away, basket in hand, Hazel's dog food still on my list, and not an ounce of sadness in my step. The divorce was official by mid-November. No court dramatics, no last-minute pleas. Just 2 signatures and a couple of legal stamps like the finale of a quiet war. I stared at the final decree when Ruth sent it over, not out of disbelief, but to confirm that yes, the empire had indeed fallen. The strange part? I didn't feel hollow. I felt clear. People kept asking if I was okay, like I'd just crawled out of a wreckage, coughing dust and memories. But the truth was, I wasn't limping. I was walking tall, taller than I had in years. Because when your heart gets sucker punched by the one person who swore they'd never throw the first hit, something changes. You stop flinching. You start seeing things for what they are, not what you wish they were. And you stop apologizing for being the one left standing. I submitted the manuscript for After Brandon to a small publishing house a week after the paperwork cleared. They weren't big, just a sharp team in Boston known for printing raw, voice-driven stories. Think literary therapy for people who hate therapy. I didn't expect a yes. I expected a thanks but no thanks, and maybe a participation sticker for trying. Instead, I got a call from the editor herself. Amy, mid-30s, sharp as a razor, and somehow still able to laugh like a human being. This is the most honest thing I've read all year, she said. It's angry, it's funny, and somehow it doesn't ask for pity. We want it. I blinked. You're serious? Deadly. We even love the title. Feels like the kind of thing that'll trend and upset exactly the right people. Like yoga instructors named Brandon. She laughed. Especially them. And just like that, I was a published author. Now, I won't pretend like I was suddenly rich or famous. The advance was modest. The marketing budget? Even smaller. But the moment that book hit shelves, both digital and real, I started hearing from people I didn't even know. Emails. DMs. Random dudes at gas stations who recognized me from the back flap photo Marcus insisted I take with Hazel in my lap. Bro, I read your book, one guy said while pumping gas in a rainstorm. It's like you crawled inside my brain and turned the lights on. Another wrote, my wife left me for her life coach. Your book made me laugh for the first time in 3 months. Thank you. One message stood out most. It was from a woman named Kelly. Mid-40s, school counselor, 2 kids, recently divorced. Her email subject line read, your book made me realize I wasn't crazy. She wrote, you reminded me that the person who cheats doesn't just break the rules. They rewrite the story and expect you to keep reading like nothing happened. That line hit hard. Because it was true. One Friday night, I did something bold. I agreed to a podcast interview. Some guy named Troy ran a show called Sucker Punched, Stories of Sudden Chaos. Catchy, if a little on the nose. He had me on for a 1-hour live Q&A. I figured a couple of people would tune in. Maybe an ex-colleague with popcorn. Instead, we had thousands of listeners. So Carter, Troy began. What made you write After Brandon instead of, say, slashing tires or relocating to the mountains? I laughed. Oh, I thought about the tires. Did you really? Absolutely. But then I realized, revenge fades. Stories stick. Troy leaned in, grinning through the screen. Favorite line from the book? I didn't hesitate. If betrayal is the match, indifference is the water. The chat lit up. Dozens of fire emojis, clapping hands, and a few Brandon jokes I won't repeat. It felt like therapy disguised as entertainment. And I wasn't just healing. I was helping other people do the same. Then one night, while I was cooking pasta and Hazel was busy stealing socks from the laundry basket, I got a call. Blocked number. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity is a nosy roommate. Hello, Carter. The voice hit like a cold front. It was her. Not just her, But my ex, the former love of my life, the reason this whole story existed. Well, I said. It speaks. She ignored the jab. I read your book. Of course she did. They always read the book. I didn't use your name, I said flatly. No lawsuits to file. I know. You changed the names. But the story. She paused, and I could hear the tightness in her voice. It's accurate. Brutally so. I didn't reply. She went on. I didn't call the fight. Or defend Brandon. God knows there's nothing left to defend there. I stirred the pasta, keeping my tone even. So why call? Because I realized I never said I was sorry. Not really. I made excuses. I shifted blame. And then I read those pages, and it's like looking in a mirror I've been avoiding. That silence that followed wasn't bitter. It was tired. I said, took you long enough. I deserve that. You deserve a lot more. But I'm not in the revenge business anymore. She exhaled. I just wanted you to know I see it now. All of it. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. Thanks. Then I hung up. I didn't need closure. I had a bestseller. They say success is the best revenge, but I'd argue that indifference might be even better. After all, nothing deflates a narcissist faster than realizing they're no longer the center of your orbit. And me? I was finally in a different galaxy. With after Brandon gathering modest traction, enough to keep me stocked in coffee and sarcastic emails from strangers, I was invited to speak at a local book club. Not my usual scene, but I figured I owed it to myself to wear something other than sweatpants and see what a room full of civilians thought about my public heartbreak. The event was held in a cozy bookstore with more fairy lights than fire code likely allowed. There were 30 chairs, a plate of cookies, and a slightly flustered host named Denise who reminded me of a high school guidance counselor with a caffeine addiction. She introduced me like I was a Pulitzer winner. And here he is, she beamed, the man who turned betrayal into a bestseller. Carter Fields. Applause. Actual applause. I stood, gave a half smile, and walked to the mic, adjusting it like I knew what I was doing. Hi, I said. I'm Carter. I used to be a husband. Now I'm a metaphor. Laughter. Good. My crowd. The Q&A started tame. Was writing the book cathartic? Is Hazel real? Did Brandon ever reach out? That last one earned a laugh from me. If he ever reads, I doubt he got past chapter 1. Too many multisyllable words. Then, from the back, a hand went up. Confident. Not trembling. Painted nails. Sharp eyes. What would you say to a woman who cheated but regrets it? Silence. I looked at her. She didn't flinch. She wasn't accusing or apologizing, just asking. The room waited, still and taut. I took a breath. I'd say regret is a mirror, not a mop. You can look at it. You can study what it reflects. But it doesn't clean up the mess. That takes more than sorry. That takes showing up differently consistently. And not for applause. She nodded. No tears. Just understanding. We moved on. Cookies were consumed. Books were signed. Someone asked Hazel for a paw print. Later, as the crowd thinned, a woman in a slate gray coat approached. Not the one who asked the cheating question, another. Tall, poised, with a quiet kind of strength in her walk. Carter, she said, extending a hand. Kelly. The name rang a bell. Email Kelly? The same. Divorcee, school counselor, newfound fan of dog content. I smiled. Thanks for coming. She tucked her hands in her coat pockets. Thanks for writing something that didn't talk down to us. I've read too many self-help books that treat betrayal like a learning opportunity. You treated it like it hurts. Because it does. We talked for 15 minutes in the parking lot. Then another 10. Then Hazel whined, reminding me we both had to pee and preferred grass to asphalt. I left with her number. Over the next few weeks, Kelly and I talked. Nothing romantic, just two people comparing emotional battle scars over coffee and texts. She had stories too. Her husband had left her after 20 years, chasing a woman 12 years younger with a fake laugh and a real trust fund. He said he felt seen with her, Kelly told me once. I said, that's because she only sees your bank account. We clicked, not in a firework kind of way, but like puzzle pieces from two different boxes that still managed to fit. She got the silences, the flashbacks, the random moments when grief slaps you for no reason while brushing your teeth. And she didn't need me to be funny, or wise, or even healed. She just needed me to be there. That was new and nice. One evening, Marcus and I were grilling in his backyard. Hazel chased something imaginary near the fence. Marcus flipped burgers like he was auditioning for a cooking show. So, he said, you and Kelly. What's the deal? There's no deal. But you like her. Sure. She's solid. Smart. Doesn't overshare on social media. That's rare these days. Marcus grinned. You're scared. Of what? Of liking someone and losing again. I sipped my beer. You ever think it's not fear? Maybe it's just caution. Wisdom, even. He flipped a burger. Wisdom is knowing the stove's hot. Fear is never cooking again. I hate it when Marcus makes sense. A few days later, Kelly and I met up for coffee at a quiet little spot that played jazz and didn't charge extra for oat milk. She wore a green sweater and no makeup. Said she'd come straight from school. You look like you just defused a fifth-grade meltdown, I said. 3, actually, she replied. And a PTA president who thinks sugar-free cupcakes are a crime against humanity. We sat, talked, sipped. And somewhere between our second cups and Hazel licking foam off Kelly's hand, I realized something. I wasn't waiting for my ex to apologize anymore. I wasn't even waiting to feel over it. I was just living again. And it felt real. Not romantic comedy real. Not fireworks and fate real. Just simple. Earned. Stable. After Brandon, I thought I'd never trust again. After Brandon, I thought my best days were in the rear view. But here I was. In a coffee shop. With a good woman. A good dog. And no ghosts in the room. Maybe the best revenge isn't success. Maybe it's peace. Maybe it's rebuilding something better, brick by brick. Without her. Without Brandon. But with something that lasts. The first Christmas post-divorce was a study in contrasts. Hazel still tried to eat the wrapping paper. Marcus gifted me a mug that said, "World's okayest ex-husband." I laughed harder than I'd laughed in months. I didn't put up a tree. Couldn't. Just didn't feel like decorating a house that still echoed with last year's betrayal. Instead, I burned the last of the old photo albums in the fire pit out back. Not out of bitterness, but for closure. I held one photo a little longer than the rest. Us at the beach, her hair blowing sideways, Brandon nowhere in sight. For a second, I almost missed it. Then I tossed it in. The flames crackled, bright and greedy. Hazel sat next to me, chewing a stick like it owed her money. "Here's to new traditions," I said, raising a toast with a beer bottle. The stick snapped. We both nodded. It came on a Thursday in late spring. A wedding invitation. Return address. None. Envelope. Hand-addressed in a handwriting I knew too well. Brandon and her. They were getting married. The note inside read, "We thought you should hear it from us. No hard feelings. Life moves forward, right?" I stared at the RSVP card for a full 5 minutes. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I showed up. Not to wish them well, but because sometimes showing up is the revenge. I wore a charcoal suit. Brought a date. Not Kelly. She hated formal events. This was a friend of a friend who owed me a favor and looked like a Bond villain in heels. We arrived just in time for the "do you take" part. She saw me. Her eyes widened. Brandon looked confused. I smiled. No wave. No drama. Just a man reminding them that I hadn't disappeared. We stayed for one glass of wine. Long enough for the whispers to start. Then we left. As I buckled into the car, my date asked, "Worth it?" "Oh yeah," I said. "I'm sleeping like a baby tonight." The paperback edition of After Brandon hit shelves in August. The publisher added a tagline to the cover. "The breakup book everyone's talking about." I had one last chapter to write. Not for the public. For me. So I did. It was called The Man Who Walked Away. It didn't end with vengeance. Or fame. Or even love. It ended with a guy walking his dog at sunset, no longer rehearsing old arguments in the shower. No longer dreaming of second chances or perfect last words. Just walking. Hazel by his side. A breeze in the air. A future unburdened. And a quiet certainty in his chest. She didn't break him. She freed him.